It all started with a knock I never expected. Not from burglars, not from police, but from HOA security, acting like they were above the law. I was inside my own home, drinking coffee, when I looked out the window and saw them swarming my property like it was a raid. No warrant, no notice. Just a bunch of badge-wearing HOA cops forcing their way onto my land. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding, but what happened next proved they weren't here to talk. They were here to take control. They claimed they had authority to inspect my home. They said I'd violated community rules, but when I asked for paperwork, they couldn't produce a single document. Instead, they threatened me, pushed past my gate, and started taking photos of my family, my belongings, even the inside of my garage. That's when I realized this wasn't about an HOA violation. This was about power. And they thought they could use it against a veteran who wouldn't fight back, but they were dead wrong. I kept calm, documented everything, and got legal backup. And now? Those same HOA enforcers are facing serious charges. Not fines, not suspensions. We're talking felony prison time. Up to 20 years behind bars for what they did on my property that day. What did I uncover that changed everything? What secret were they trying to cover up? Stay tuned, because what I found goes deeper than anyone expected. And this is just the beginning. A few days before the so-called raid, I had noticed strange cars slowly driving by my house. Cars I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was just nosy neighbors or maybe even real estate agents. But then I started getting anonymous notices on my door from the HOA, claiming I had unauthorized structures on my property. The funny thing? Nothing had changed. Same fence, same patio, same shed that had been there since I bought the place. Something felt off. That's when I started digging. I pulled up old HOA records, board meeting minutes, anything I could get my hands on. And guess what? My name wasn't listed properly in half the documents, like they were trying to erase my ownership. Turns out there'd been a secret push to rezone several properties in the neighborhood, mine included, and turn them into short-term rental income without telling the homeowners. I wasn't just a target, I was standing in the way of someone else's profit. Then came the so-called security team. These weren't licensed officers. They were private contractors, hired by a rogue HOA board member with a history of shady business deals. The whole thing had the feel of a setup, like they were hoping to provoke me, hoping I'd overreact so they could claim I was hostile and have me removed. But I didn't take the bait. I stayed calm. I recorded everything. And what I caught on camera that day is what's now turning into a full-blown criminal investigation. After the incident, I started getting calls from neighbors, quiet ones at first. A few of them admitted they'd seen the HOA cops snooping around other homes too, always targeting veterans, elderly homeowners, or people who'd pushed back on recent HOA rules. One neighbor, a retired Marine like me, said he caught them on his security camera trying to peek through his windows late at night. They reported it, but nothing ever came of it. The HOA just brushed it off, saying it was routine inspection. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my property. This was a pattern, a power move. I started talking to more residents, collecting footage, gathering copies of letters, fines, and emails that didn't line up. The deeper I dug, the more it looked like certain HOA board members were working together to pressure people into leaving their homes. Some even sold right after months of nonstop harassment. And guess who bought the houses? A company tied to one of the board members. Meanwhile, the so-called security team kept circling. I'd see their black SUVs drive by at weird hours, always. Slow, always watching. My wife started getting nervous. My kids couldn't sleep. Every time I left the house, I felt like I had to check over my shoulder. I filed complaints, I spoke to lawyers, but the HOA just kept stonewalling me until the day I handed over the surveillance footage to law enforcement. That's when things really started to unravel. After I turned the footage over to the authorities, things escalated fast. It wasn't just my word anymore. Now there was solid evidence. Video of the private security team entering my property without consent. Audio of them threatening me, making calls to someone higher up while standing in my backyard like they owned the place. But instead of backing off, the HOA doubled down. I started getting violation notices almost daily. Trash can left out 5 minutes too long. Grass half an inch too tall. A flag in the wrong spot. It was clear they were trying to push me to the edge. Then one night around 2 a.m., I heard movement outside. I checked my cameras and saw 2 figures walking around the side of my house with flashlights. They weren't wearing uniforms, just plain clothes. I stayed quiet and called the local police. By the time they arrived, the men were gone. But the cops took it seriously. That moment changed everything. Now law enforcement had real-time involvement. At the same time, I got a call from an insider, someone who used to work closely with the HOA board. He didn't say much over the phone, just that I needed to see some documents. We met in person, and what he handed me confirmed everything I suspected. There were emails, transaction records, internal memos about targeting problem homeowners. Didn't know who I could trust anymore. And with my family's safety on the line, I knew the next move had to count. Just when I thought I had a grip on what was happening, the second twist hit, and it came from inside the legal system. A week after handing over the evidence, I got a letter from the county office saying my homeownership was under review. No warning, no details, just a vague notice claiming a discrepancy in title transfer. I nearly lost it. I've owned this home for years, paid for it, lived in it, maintained every inch of it, and suddenly, some paperwork issue was enough to question whether it was even mine? I called my attorney, and within a day, he found the problem. A forged document had been filed. Someone had tried to transfer partial ownership of my property to a shell company, the same shell company that had bought out several homes in the neighborhood after pressuring families out. The signature wasn't mine. The notary listed didn't exist. This wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an aggressive HOA, it was something bigger. Real estate fraud, harassment, illegal surveillance. Someone had money riding on this, and I was in their way. The security team wasn't protecting the neighborhood. They were cleaning the board's tracks. I brought this to the authorities. That's when federal investigators got involved. And suddenly, people who had ignored my calls for months were scrambling. Subpoenas were being issued. Phones went dark. But just as I started to feel momentum building, something happened that I never saw coming. The morning the indictments came down, my phone blew up. The federal agents had executed a raid, not on my property this time, but on the HOA's office and the home of the board president. Turns out, everything I'd uncovered was just the tip of the iceberg. Wire fraud, falsified property records, bribery, and an entire ring of illegal home takeovers. Multiple members of the HOA board were arrested, along with the head of the private security firm. The same guys who had stormed my property were now facing charges that could put them away for 20 years. It felt like justice. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The fraudulent title transfer was voided. My name was cleared. And the HOA? It was disbanded under court order. The neighborhood finally started talking openly. People shared their stories, some even breaking down in tears. I wasn't the only one they'd tried to push out. But I was the one who fought back and didn't stop. Just when I thought it was over, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed screenshot. An internal message between 2 unnamed board members. It read, "We were never supposed to go after the soldier. It was supposed to be the house next door." That one line changed everything. My fight had exposed something huge, but was I ever really the target? Or had I just stepped into a war that was never meant to involve me? That letter haunted me for days. Why was my house never the real target? Who lived next door, and what made their property so important? I started talking to neighbors again and found out the house beside mine had been quietly sold months before all this started, right to a powerful real estate developer with ties to the city council. Suddenly, everything clicked. The HOA's harassment, the fake title transfers, and the aggressive security actions were all part of a bigger scheme to push out homeowners and make way for a massive development project. Even though I wasn't the original target, I became the unexpected roadblock they didn't count on. My fight stopped the whole scheme from moving forward, and the neighborhood is now pushing for real change. New leadership, transparency, and stronger protections for homeowners, especially veterans and longtime residents. This experience taught me a lot about standing up for what's right, even when the odds feel stacked against you. If you're facing challenges with your HOA, or you feel powerless in the face of corruption, know that your voice matters. Document everything, seek legal advice, and never back down from protecting your home. My family and I are finally rebuilding our peace. The HOA cops who stormed my property are behind bars, and the neighborhood is healing. But the battle also reminded me how important